Hello everyone, it's Jennifer and thank you for joining me today. I have a few projects in mind. We're going to be making 3 bracelets and we're going to be using some of these amazing, gorgeous agate beads from the Adornable Elements Beads of the Month Club. And I did an unboxing for this for April. I'm a little late to the game to get this video out, but just to give you an idea of some of the items that you get when you subscribe to their Beads of the Month Club. They have a wide variety of different, they have seed beads. I don't know how to call it, like different, not shapes, but there's a variety of the different types of Beads of the Month Club that you can sign up for. One of them is the gemstones. I love gemstones. Gemstones are amazing. And when I saw that I got these gorgeous agate beads, they are amazing. I also have some past videos using some Dalmatian jaspers that were gorgeous. And so just go ahead and check out some of my past videos and also jump on over to the Adornable Elements website. I'm going to put a link in the description for you. What I have on my mat right now is I have some Soft Flex, Extreme Flex, and Champagne, and this is medium size. I love this beading wire. This beading wire is amazing. I get it in silver, in the sterling silver and champagne, and I use this for my fine line. And my fine line is all of my sterling silver, gold-filled pieces that I make. I also get the crimp tubes from them that are sterling silver and gold-filled. And they also have copper and other colors as well. For Soft Flex, they also have a variety of colors too, up and down the rainbow. So be sure to check them out as well. I do have some wire guards, a couple of those 2x2 crimp tubes. I have some jump rings from my stash. And this toggle actually came from the companion pack that you can add on to your Beads of the Month Club subscription. And this one was included all Tierracast findings. And I'm not using any of the oval jump rings for this project. I'm going to be using it in another project. So I'm going to show you how to take those oval jump rings and turn them into your extender for a bracelet. And just incredible. So I still have tons. I have spacers, I have those jump rings, I have another toggle, I have some head pins, this beautiful centerpiece, and a large pendant that we're going to use later. What I'm bringing in from my stash is I have these little tiny beads, and I wanted just something a little tiny to go in between the larger, these are the coin beads, and I just wanted something a little tiny to go in between. And here was my thought, was maybe doing this, maybe adding a little seed bead, and then adding maybe a gold seed bead just to add some texture to the bracelet. And I thought maybe that would work out. So we're going to give those a try. I haven't tried them out yet. I did something using just the 2 seed beads, which Beads of the Month Club, they do have a seed bead club that you can enroll in if gemstones are not your thing. I had these in my stash and thought that the colors worked really well. So I'm not sure. I'm not even sure if I might need to use more beads. I do have 2 more left that I was saving, hopefully to make a pair of earrings. But if I can't get enough length out of this, I will need to dive into those. All right, so I work from the spool so that I can try and minimize the waste that I have. I cannot reduce, or I mean, I can't eliminate the waste, but I can try and reduce. So I'm going to show you how I work from the spool. And what I'm going to do is I want to go ahead and start my pattern. And my pattern, let's get you a little centered here. So the pattern on this end, I'm going to go ahead and use a little tiny seed bead and a large seed bead. One of the larger ones. So this one is, let's see, this one is 11-0 and this one is 8-0. Those are the sizes. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with this. And if I need to add some length, if I need like another 1/2 inch, but I don't want to add an entire section, I can go ahead and add some more. All right, so let's go ahead and start stringing. And then this is what my pattern is going to be. And we'll see what it looks like. We'll see. I'm sure it'll be cute because these colors are just incredible. So what I did was I just went diving into my stash to see and for this little center bead. And my original thought was to grab like a rondelle, like a white or cream rondelle, but I saw this color and it's not the size that I wanted. I didn't want anything huge though, because I don't want to take away from this gorgeousness here. But I just thought the colors just went really well together. And I'm not one for taking different items from my stash and putting them together and mixing things up as far as, you know, not having a kit or a bead box or something. And so I find that this was very, very fun for me to do because this is a little outside my box. And yeah, so I pretty much love it. All right, so I'm just going to continue going. I'm not going to subject you to watching me string or listen to me talk the whole time. But I'm going to go ahead and keep on going and see what my length is on this, because I do have 2 more bracelets that I want to share with you, different techniques. So we're going to be doing a few different techniques. And then my friend has requested a little bit of a tutorial on the difference between a couple of different types of stretch cord, stretch fiber. So I'm going to dive into that. I'm not an expert on that, but I will tell you my personal preference. But I am going to go ahead and go away off camera and finish this up and come back to you when I'm almost done. I am done stringing, and what I did was I ran that same pattern all the way down, and when I got to the end, I did the same thing that I have over here on this end. And if I needed to add length, I would just add it all over here on this side, check the size, and then I would just take off what I added that would go over onto this side and go that way. So I still am able to, even though this is all still attached to the spool, I add it over onto this side, and then I just take it off and rearrange it over on this end. But I put it on my little technical bracelet measurer here, and it measured about 6 1/4. And so then I figured that after I get this on, along with the crimp tubes and the wire guards and adding a couple of jump rings, I will go ahead and it should be a good length. So this color that I used it's lined light seafoam AB. And then this one here is just gold. And I did not get these from Adornable. I got them from Kelly's Bead Boutique. And I've had these in my stash for a long time. But Adornable does have seed beads. So if you don't have a seed bead stash, what a great way to build up your stash by having a beads of the month using seed beads. And they have rotating clubs, different ones that you can enroll in. So the sky's the limit on what you can enroll in at Adornable Elements. And again, I'll put links in the description. So the first thing I'm going to do is, this is a good length. And first thing is do I have 11/0, 8/0, and then coin? 8/0, 11/0, little tiny pearl. And I just make sure that I have those 5 beads in between each one, just like so. And I do, and go that way. The good thing is I have 2 left over to make the pair of earrings that I was wanting to make. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab my crimp tube, move my jump rings. I'm going to grab my crimp tube, and then I'm going to use my wire guard. And I do like using a wire guard when I can, because it does add another level of protection, especially if this is going to be a gift or if it's going to be something that you're going to sell. Let's go ahead and get that through there. Okay, so now we have that going through. And I just want to pull in my crimp tube here, pull this through. And this first crimp that we're going to be doing is, I don't have to worry about the beads because when we get over to the other side, you're going to see how I kind of have to worry about the seed beads because I don't want to crimp over it. And I'm just going to use the standard crimping tool where the back notch, there's 2 notches, and the back notch forms like a taco or a U, and then the front notch is what rounds it off at the end. So I'm going to take that front notch though, before I even start crimping. When you look at this, the wire guard is a little separated and you have a little bit of wire exposure, which is fine. I'm okay with that, but I do like just to close it off a little bit, just because now I'm going to gain that little bit of wire, and then I kind of taper it down a little bit. So for me, it's just a personal preference. And what I'm doing here is I'm trying to keep the wires separated and they're not crossing underneath. So now I'm going to go into that very back notch and I'm going to go ahead and give it a crimp. And what this does is this separates them. So it separates the wire. One wire is in one side and the other side of the wire is on the other. Okay, and you see that, and it's not flat, but it's not rounded off. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and go in that front notch and close it off just like so. Now it's all closed off. Now what I do prefer to do is I do prefer to have this pass through the first bead, only so that it sits a little more even on the crimp tube. But with these smaller seed beads, I will not be able to get that through there. So I'm not going to be able to get that back through a second time. So I'm going to have to come in with my cutters and cut off at the crimp. And the only reason why I prefer to send, and I do the tug test too, the only reason why I prefer is because now that wire is on one side of the crimp tube. I mean, it's very, very minimal, but when I am when I have it on, you see how it's just kind of off. It just kind of sideways. But again, that's just me. And again, if someone's standing that close to you to tell, they're standing too close to you. All right, so let's make sure we get that seed bead down there. And then I'm going to cut off just enough so that I can pass it through. And as you can see over here, even though I had a whole bunch of wire, I just really went very minimal because I don't like to waste. And yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and I picked up that crimp tube, going to pick up my wire guard, going to pass it back through the wire guard on the other side. Oh, something I didn't mention is you want to make sure that your wire is in the channel of the wire guard. Here's another reason why I like to pass it through the first bead is for this side. For the second side where I'm going to be crimping up against the bead, I like to have it go through the bead so that I can be pulling from over here rather than right next to the crimp. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is get this down here. I have to make sure I'm not crossing either. Then I want to go ahead and close that off a little bit, and it gets a little wonky. But then I don't want it to be stiff. I want a little bit of movement. So what I do is I just kind of move it around a little bit and put it in the form that it would be. And then I'll go ahead, and when I keep it in that form, I make it all nice and tight. Now, when I go to crimp down, I do not want to crimp on that seed bead. I've done it before. And I'm just going to pull it away just a little bit and then use that back crimp. And then I can still crimp over the seed bead here, but I'm going to go ahead and do it that way there. And so I kind of had it like this to see where my crimp needed to land. But then when I went to go crimp, I did this a little bit so that it gave it a little bit of room. Then I'm going to go ahead and come in with my cutters. And then this is it. I don't know where the other piece is that I cut off. There we go. So this is about it that I have as waste, which isn't that much. And if I would have just pulled from the spool and went like this, I probably would have cut way too much. So you just, again, you don't eliminate, you just reduce. All right, so there we go there. Now we're going to go ahead and add our jump rings. Now the funny thing about toggles is when you have beads, if my toggle, this side here, was up against this large bead, it would likely not go through the other end. So something to forward think about when you're going to be using a toggle is to think of how is it going to be attaching. Now you can always add more jump rings. So if you did have this right up against here, so if you were just going to use your bracelet and just use all of the coin beads, you can do that. Just be sure that on this side that you're passing through the round side has some extra jump rings. But we don't have to worry about it with this one, because if you think ahead of time as well, if you can just incorporate that concept into your design, you don't have to, there's not a whole lot of messing up that you can do when it comes to whether it's going to pass through or not. We're not going to have any problems here. Okay, so let's go ahead and open this up and add our little stick end of the toggle. And again, when I opened up my jump ring, I didn't open outwards. I just opened from front to back, not side to side. And then you can hear it lock in place and you've got yourself your one side of your toggle. Let's go ahead and go here. I did have extra jump rings just in case, because that can happen where here I thought that that there would be enough room. You never know. But we're going to check that. Always check your stuff before you either give it away or before you sell it, just like the tug test that I did. Okay, there we go. And I love all of these colors together. And so I have a lot more beads here. I have some of these gorgeous, like a diamond cut, and I might use those for that too. And then, so here we go. This is what I was talking about, passing it through. You have to pass it through a little ways before you get it. And there we go. If you want to add some dangles, you can add some dangles, because we do have some head pins in here if you want to add some dangles. And if I were to add my dangles, I would probably add my dangles over on this side here. Because if you add them over here and you need that part to get you through, like you do, see how it kind of goes through a little bit in order to get the toggle to go on, you might run into issues. So if you're going to add some dangles, add it over on this side. And there is bracelet number 1. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's gorgeous. And I love Tierracast. Tierracast is my favorite. I've made that no secret. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the get these all put away, put them off to the side, because we are going to be bringing in, we're going to do a little bit of some knotting. So we're going to do a little bit of knotting, and we're going to do a little some square knots to finish off and make a sliding bracelet. So let me get this all put away and I'll be right back. For this next bracelet, I'm going to be using some knotting cord, and I got this from John Bead. I got it from Danielle Wick's jewelry, and it's a John Bead brand, and I absolutely love it. It is a nice flowy, it's, I think, nylon, and I just love it. I don't have the little sticker anymore on it, so I couldn't tell you much about it, but just to know that it's amazing. I love it. And so I have already strung on some of those little rondelle-ish faceted apatite beads that were also included, which I love. And I could have added those maybe in between here in the middle, and that probably would have been really cute too. But again, I really just wanted these beads to poke out, and they do with doing it this way. So we're gonna go ahead and use this. And then we are also I'm gonna bring in my, my Zap-It. I'm going to bring in my Zap-It tool, and I just put in a fresh battery. That's what's really important with these tools, is that you have fresh batteries. We're going to be using that, and then a pair of scissors. So now what I've done is I have strung on all of the beads, and what I did was to make, you see how this is like a little pokey? It looks like a little bit of a needle. I took some Loctite, and I just dipped it a little bit on this paper towel. And then what I did was I grabbed this and I placed it you know, like say the dab was right here, and I placed it a little bit like that so that I could run it through, and then I let it dry, and it ends up having a nice little point on it, and I was able to pass it through these beads. So now that I have my desired length, so my desired length, I want it to be sliding. So I want someone with a 6.5 inch wrist to be able to slide it like so, right? Because we're going to put a slider, we're going to do some square knots here. But then I also want someone that has a larger wrist to be able to wear it as well. Then what I want to be able to do is have it, you have to be able to fit it over your hand. So you just kind of have to keep all that in mind. So I don't have exact measurements, and this is probably the most, as far as when I'm wasting my stringing material, this is probably the most that you'll see me wasting because, again, eyeballing stuff and things like that, that's just not my thing. I failed to mention, I'm also going to be using some tweezers. I have some real fine point tweezers that I like to use because that will get me down to exactly where my knot needs to be. And that will be important mostly on this side here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do an overhand knot. And I want to try and get as close down to this bead as possible. And I'm still working from the spool. I do this overhand knot. And if I were to knot it, yeah, I could probably wiggle it down and get it as close as I can. But if I just insert my tweezers through the loop there, just like so, and my string that I'm going to be pulling on is behind me, I just put this at the tippy tip, and when I pull on that, it puts my knot down where the tippy tip is. And then I just place my tweezers over and I just pull it to give it an extra little security. And so now I have my knot, okay? Then on this side, I'm going to do the same thing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and literally cut the cord. So I'm going to go a little even just in case. And I want it to be flowy, so I don't want it to be stiff. So I'm going to do just like so. All right, I'm going to have it a little bit like this, but I don't want a bunch of gaps in the cording. But I'm going to go ahead and just do it just like this. And I do this with when I'm going to be using crimps on beading wire and stuff like that too. So I'm going to go ahead and do my next overhand knot. Bring that through, get that to the back, and now I'm going to come in with my tweezers and go down just to the very bottom, just like so at the very tip. And I am just going to go ahead and give it that little push and pull. And there we go. Okay, and so now, and it flows. Now, if you were to stretch it out like this, there's gaps. You can see gaps, right? But that's not how you wear it on your bracelet, on your wrist. You wear it like so. All right, so now comes where we're going to go ahead and we are going to do square knot. And this is where, so I'm not tying anything off yet on the ends because I'm going to be cutting the majority of that off. But now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut off maybe about like 15 inches or so. Okay, so I have about 15 inches of this. And what I want to do is I want to just pass that under both cords. And you can tape these off if you want to, and you'll see why you might want to tape them off as I get going, because then I'll struggle. I'm going to get to the end here, and I just kind of want to find the center because I want to make sure that I'm going to have enough cord on both ends. So I have about the center there. Now this is where we're going to make our P's and Q's. And I learned this from Kelly at Kelly's Bead Boutique. I learned how to do this, and it's the P's and Q's, and I always mess up because I always get distracted while I'm doing this. It's so soothing and relaxing, and then I end up forgetting, oh man, did I just do a P or did I do a Q? So I always do, I end up having to stop the video and restart it. But here we're going to make a P on this side, and this strand is just lying on top of those two here. These two strands are from the bracelet. This is our free form. Then you're just going to make a P. So now the left side is going to go over the side that you just brought over. So this, and then this is how I know it, is I go over, then I take the end and I go under. So I'm going to go under everything here. And then I go over on this other side. This first one's always the trickiest. And so then I go over the loop on this side. So under, over, under, over, and then just kind of pull. And there you go. Okay. And the good thing about this cording is that it's kind of not satiny, but it's flowy, so it will slide easily. Now we're going to make our P. So we go over with our right, okay? Then we're going to go under all and then over the loop on the other side. And then we're going to go ahead and do that. And sometimes with it not being secured down, you get this kind of wonky, but all you just have to do is just pull on it and it will go correct. And it's just because I have there's no tension or anything. So now, there we go. If you have a tying station, you can do your tying station. Again, you can tape it down. I've done that where I've taped down and it works out just perfectly. Okay, so now let's go ahead and we're going to do our P. And a square knot is not complete unless you're doing your P and your Q. So we're going to go over the cords, then we're going to go under the cords, and then over the loop. There's your P, and then we're going to do our Q. Again, you just have to pull, especially if you're doing like I am, where I'm not taped down. If I'm taped down, you don't have to worry about all that. Then we're going to do our Q, and it's easier for me to grab the end and poke it all the way through like so. It's just easier for me. And then I just kind of hold both sides and do that. Okay. And then there's a way to add, the knots, and I'm not sure how to do that. But then, so I'm going to go ahead and continue going down to the end, and I'm probably going to do, we'll see how many we're going to do, but I'll go ahead and keep on going, and I'll come back and do one more for us to end off. So as you're nearing the end and you're like, oh, I don't know how long to make it, something to take into consideration too is how long you want your bracelet to be. So when I pull it together like so, and I put it on my, my high-tech thing here, when it is all the way closed, it's at 6.5. And that's what I was looking for. I'm looking for it to be about 6.5 when it's fully closed, and then it can still open up for those that have a larger wrist, and open it up and go even further. So that's how I determine how far to go with my square knots. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I want to see, so I'm going to keep these off to the side. Some people will cut them off now and go for it, but I'm kind of a let's not trim it off yet because you never know type thing. So what I want to do is I have a very large hand. So if it can go over my hand, it can go over anybody's hand. So what I do is I just test it out just like so and know that this went over my hand pretty easily. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and know that that's about where I can go. And what I'm going to do is that's where I'm going to make my knot. So that's where I'm going to make my knot, not for these guys, and I know it's probably really confusing, but that's where I'm going to make my knot for my ends. And I want them to be even, so I might just kind of scooch this just a little bit to make it more even. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is this is all coming apart now, so now it's time to go ahead and get that tied off. And how I do that is that's where my little thread zapper comes into play. So I'm going to come in with I have black strings going everywhere, so let me try and do this like this. All right, so now this is just my macrame cords. So I'm going to go ahead and get those nicely tight in there, not so tight where you can't move it, but tight enough to where now I can come in and I'm going to cut just above the end. So, I mean, just a scotch over the end. Okay, and again, look how much extra I have. I have tons of extra. Then what I want to do is I don't want to glue anything, because then if you glue it, it's fabric, and so you have that potential of gluing your square knot onto your cord and it won't slide. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit my button here, and I am just going to tap it down and then just do that, and that keeps it from coming apart, melts it. Let's do the other side. Go ahead and put that down. Be very careful with that too, because the tip is pretty warm. I'm going to come in and just cut enough off to where I can form a nice bead of melted cord. Okay, push my button and then start going down. And then just, it's warm when you poke it in because it's melting, but now you have that all in there. Perfect, right? Okay, so we're going to keep that off to the side for a moment. Now, this is where I know that I can tie my knot for my ends. Okay, so my knot's going to go here. I want to just make sure again that I'm about half, and it's about half, maybe a little scotch off, but again, that's okay. So now what I want to do is I'm going to bring in my tweezers again, okay? And I want my knot to be down here, because what you're doing is you're going to be pulling this. So those ends are going to come out. You don't want these long ends. So I'm going to go ahead and do an overhand knot. And you can add dangles to this too if you want to. I'm not going to for this one. I'm just going to show you how I finish it off with using my zapper. Okay, so now there's my knot. And I'm going to just tighten it up a little bit by pulling. Okay, now let's go over to this side. Go ahead and give it a little bit of this. Go like so. Add my tweezers down to the very base and pull. And then put my tweezers over and then just pull. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and actually pull these so they're not sitting there on top of this, because I'm going to do some more melting. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the end. And you can leave it like this and you can let it fray, but I would put some, maybe some GS Hypo Cement or something in there to make sure that that knot doesn't come undone. Or you can just use your little thread zapper, and I probably have a little bit much there, so I'm going to cut it down just a little bit more. I'm going to take my thread zapper and I'm going to do just what I did before. I want to melt, 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 melt. And then, again, it's warm, but you want it to go into place so that you know that it's not going to come out. Then let's go ahead and do the same thing here. Go on this side. And again, I have a lot of extra cord. I'm so wasteful with this because, you know, you have to work with it too. So, and let's go ahead and do that. Put the lid back on because that tip is warm. And again, you can add some dangles if you want to, but you just pull it apart this way. It looks like I have a little bit of a straggler there. There we go. Then you can just put it on your wrist. And then I just put my finger over the knot, my fingernail, and then I just start pulling, and then I pull, and then I pull, and I just scotch it until I have it all ready. There we go. And so I do have a little bit extra here just because my wrist is a little bit larger, but if I wanted to pull it a little more, I can still pull it a little bit more, maybe, without it being so tight. I like loose bracelets, obviously. Look how loose that one is. But that's really pretty, and I love it. It's that agate, and it's a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous color. And again, you don't have to worry about anything sliding. We have some knots over here. We have our little sliding knot, which is really easy to work with. And if you want to, you can add a second knot if you feel like you want to have a bigger knot, or you can always add a dangle to the end as well. So there's a different technique. We're using some knotting cord, which I absolutely love. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and bring in some stretch fiber. I'm going to use some stretch fiber on my next bracelet, and we're going to be using some of these agate rounds. So we're going to be using some agate rounds. We're also going to be bringing in some of our little spacers here because I want to be able to hide my knot. And so I'm going to use a couple of those spacers so that I can use it to hide my knot. And that's it. We will go ahead and I'll grab my stretch fiber, grab my extra beads here, and we'll come right back. We are back, and I'm going to use some stretch fiber. And I have this huge spool that I bought a while back, and I love it. I love using the stretch fiber. It's thin, it is flimsy. I do need to use a needle with it, and if any of you have seen my past videos, I lose needles all the time. That's why I try to keep them right here all the time. And so I do like using this, especially for the smaller beads, because I feel like there's a little bit more stretchiness to it. I don't know. But for my larger beads, I will use my elasticity where it's more like a cord. You don't need a needle, and I will use that. But for the purpose of this one here, I'm going to go ahead and use my stretch fiber. And I am going to work from the spool when I'm adding these on here, but I'm not sure of the exact measurement, but I just work from the spool, and I'm not sure what exact design I'm going to do. I know that I want these, and I feel like the knot would fit in between the width of this of these little, I love these spacers. They're like rope spacers from Tierracast, but I thought I would maybe double them up. And so I think what I'm going to do is double them up like so. And so all I'm going to do now is I added onto my needle. My friend asked me the difference between the two, what my preference was. Is it stretch fiber, stretch cord? Again, it's all personal preference. For me, it depends on the bead. It depends on if I can hide it or not. I do love the fiber though. And I have bracelets that are fiber that I've had that I wear all the time for last few years, and they've never frayed. They've never done anything drastic to the bracelet. They haven't come apart. It will fray here on the needle if you're passing through real tight holes. It will eventually fray, but it doesn't fray on the bracelet. So I'm going to go ahead and start threading. And again, I'm not doing any sort of special pattern. You know what? Maybe I will add these first because I know that I need to end with these, because I'm going to tuck my my knot underneath there. So I'm going to go ahead and just start going, and I am just going to start threading on. And then what I do is I do add this to my, my high-tech bracelet measurer, and I will add it onto that. And so see, the two cords going through is a little tight on these. And my thing with using the stretch fiber is that I will go through the beads twice to add that extra level of protection. So I'm going to go ahead and continue threading, and then I don't know where I'm going to go as far as where I'm going to add the other set of spacers. I don't know if I'm going to even add them. I feel like I want to. Add them somewhere in between and have maybe 4 or 5 beads, maybe 4 beads or 3 beads in between. I think that'd be kind of cute. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and keep on going. I'm not going to subject you to my threading here, but before I pass it through a second time, I want to show you how I do that, and I will come back and we'll go over that with you, because I'm probably going to have a hard time with it. And so I want to show you how possibly that can fray. Okay, so I'm down to the end, and I went ahead and Gonna make about a 6.5-inch bracelet, and I went ahead and added the 2 different ones and had just 3 in between. You can put them anywhere. You can put them off to the side. You can add these spacers anywhere. So now what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I have a fair amount left over, because I'm going to be passing back through, plus I'm going to be doing a knot. So I'm going to go ahead and just scooch it down. And for the majority of the beads, the fiber went through really easily for the majority of them. Some of them I'm probably going to have a little bit of a difficult time, but for the majority, it went through pretty well. So now what I do is I have this end here. This is my working end, and I want to pass it back through just to give it that extra added level of security. And I'm going to go ahead, and since I know that it doesn't really pass, it's probably not going to pass through so easily, I'm not going to go through a whole bunch of beads. I'm just going to go through a few until I get here. So now my wire's coming through, and I'm not going to continue pulling on the needle. That's how it frays. So I'm going to go ahead now and grab the cord. But then I need to grab this other end, because what happens is it starts coming with it. So now I'm just going to pull, and you see that coming through like so. And I'm just pulling, and now I'm going to pull it a little bit more. So I'm just a little bit of push and pull, but I'm just going to go through like 3 beads each, just because I don't want to have any added tension on this cord. Not that I'm worried about it, because once it doubles up, it is, I mean, it's a very, very secure stringing wire for me and my uses for it. Okay, so I pull a little bit, and then I grab the 2 ends of the wire there where it loops off, and then I just try to go down as close as I can so that I'm not pulling so much on the cord. Now, also too, you did not see me do any preconditioning to this stretch fiber. I didn't stretch it out. I didn't do anything like that, because you don't have to do it with this one. Okay, so let's keep on going. I'm just going to continue going around, and I will come back when I am all done. So now I'm all done. And as you can see, I didn't have any fraying. And like I said, sometimes I do because of the needle and passing through tight quarters. This was passing through tight quarters many times. But again, if you're just patient with it. Now when you see here and you say, oh, well, there's a lot of gap there. Well, I just grab both ends. So I have both ends, and then I just start pulling. And when I start pulling, it'll bring it all together. And I don't want it to be so tight either. And again, this doesn't stretch out. So it doesn't have that stretching where it'll eventually kind of stretch and break apart. So now I have my ends here, right? And I have those large holes right here in those spacers for me to tuck in my tail, because I don't want to see my tail. And I'll be doing another video where I'm going to be using some colored stretch cords, some stretch elasticity that's in gold that we're going to use. We're going to actually use it to in the design as little tails. But for this one here, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to tuck in our knot. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do an overhand knot. Okay, simple, right? And make sure that I'm just going over, going through that, that I'm in between those beads or this bead and those spacers, because I don't want to cross over, right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a surgeon's knot. So we're going to go 1 loop, 2 loop, right? And then I just kind of hold with my fingers a little bit just so that it doesn't get all wonky, and I pull. Then what I do is I take it and I just kind of pull a little bit on it to stretch it. And if it comes apart, I know that I need to tighten things up a little bit more and probably do another surgeon's knot. So I'm going to do another surgeon's knot and get that. Okay, so now I'm good, right? So now what I want to do is see how it's like this? I'm going to take one end and push it through the center of the bracelet. So now I can tie a knot that is under both strands. So now I'm going to go ahead and do another surgeon's knot. And you can switch it up where you're doing right over left, left over right. You can do any of that. I don't. Sometimes I do if I think about it, sometimes not. Okay, and there we go. And we're going to go ahead and do another one. So what I mean by that is I've been doing right over left. You can do left over right to kind of mix it up a little bit. And I don't know if it makes a difference or not. I don't typically do it, but I'm doing it here just for the sake of showing you. Okay, and then there we go there. And then I just do a little bit of pulling, tug testing, and it's not going anywhere. Now this is where I cut off my circulation. I'm going to bring in my GS Hypo Cement, and I'm going to have a paper towel handy. And what I do, and my cutters. So let me grab my cutters. I'm going to bring in my flush cutters. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull on that, right? And I'm going to hold my beads down here, and I'm going to just wrap around my finger. I'm going to pull this off with my teeth, and then just wait. Since this is a new tube, I want to wait until it starts coming out. I'm putting slight pressure. Now I can see a little bit. And I am going to dab over the entire knot, and then dab behind the knot. Okay. I'm going to just blow on it a couple times. Don't know if it does anything. And then I'm going to come in and just above where I did all of my gluing, I'm going to give it a little bit of a trim, and then the knot is tucked in under there, just like so. I'm going to wipe off the excess because a little bit's coming out. Let's wipe off. There we go, because I like to keep a nice clean GS Hypo Cement, and add on your cap. And now we have a stretch bracelet. And then, again, this is about 6.5 inches. And then we also have where we used our cord. We used our knotting cord, again, about 6.5 inches. And then we used our beading wire and our toggle from our companion pack. And there you go. There's 3 bracelets using 3 different techniques, but the same beads. We're using those gorgeous agate beads from the Adornable Elements Bead of the Month Club. Please give this video a huge thumbs up if you like it, and comment. I'd love to see what everybody has to say, and subscribe. And until next time, have a good one.